ASMR review show. We continue our October Halloween scary movie-thon, whatever you want to call it, and we continue along in the Alien franchise with the next installment, the third Alien film, appropriately titled Alien 3. But it's stylized like Alien Cubed, the little to the power of 3 symbol of sorts. Not exactly sure why they chose that, but hey, it looks nice and stylized. It's a pretty logo, so that's cool. So, Alien 3 has a bit of an infamous reputation for being the original dark sheep of the franchise, or the black sheep, the dark horse, the outcast, the least favorite child of sorts. And that is because Alien 3 had a very troubled development, went through lots of craziness being made, and ultimately was very disappointing for a lot of fans when it first came out in 1992. Still continuing along, going through all the Halloween chocolate. Now we have orange chocolate. It's really great. It's like drinking a Terry's chocolate orange. That's like not just a Canadian thing, right? That's like a every world thing. Terry's chocolate orange. That's so good, so delicious. But back to the topic at hand. So Alien 3, lots of people really dislike it for a specific set of reasons, which we'll go through. As for my opinion on the film, I love Alien 3. I think it's a great movie. I love it so much, and I understand why people hate it, but I don't hate it for those reasons. In fact, many of the reasons people dislike it is it's my favorite parts about it. So I guess I'm edgelord, I like that it's different, so hipster, But so we'll get into all that, and perhaps this will be more of a defense video for Alien 3, at least explaining my position on it. Obviously, if you don't like the film, that's fine. That's how it is. But there is one main thing I would at least perhaps ask of you to consider, and that would be if you have seen the extended version / work print version. If you've only seen the theatrical, I feel that you really missed out on a real important part of this film. So, when the quadrilogy box set came out, this lovely one that I have right here, David Fincher, director of Alien 3, his first full-length film, he was asked to come back to the film and perhaps sift through the deleted footage and create his own director's cut. But Fincher turned them down. He refused to be involved in the film. He actually walked off the project before the film was finished. I don't think he wanted to be credited as part of it. Perhaps I might be conflating that with David Lynch and Dune. And he said, no, I'm not coming back in to do my director's cut version, because as he famously said, if I wanted to make my director's cut of Alien 3, I'd have to start the entire project from the ground up again. If I want to do what I want to do, it would be impossible to just do it with the footage that was available. So, why was this film so controversial, and what was all this interference, and why does David Fincher have such low regard of it? Well, stay tuned, and the answer shall be revealed in this episode of the ASMR Review Show, talking about Alien 3. Oh, spooky. Well, first off, I showed you a bit of the Blu-ray version last time. And why don't we continue further on into this? Show you the Alien 3 pages. So here we have the Alien 3 pages. Tagline this time being 3 times the terror. You know, because it's the third movie and it's like 3 and 3 and it's like a connection, right? It's like poetry rhymes. Some lovely pictures along the bottom. Nice face hugger there. And the main picture here is this iconic image of Ripley in her cryopod from Aliens with the glass broken. So, Alien 3 was a concept that the studio had wanted to make for some time after the success of Aliens, because it was a huge hit. Won an Oscar for visual effects, and Sigourney Weaver was nominated for Best Actress, which is a first for any female in a action, science fiction, horror type film. And I guess, to my knowledge, unless we're counting, Silence of the Lambs with Jodie Foster, that's pretty much the only time that you've gotten like a big horror movie or sci-fi horror, whatever you want to call it, genre film nominated like that, which is very impressive. So they wanted to get a third Alien movie, and the biggest problem at first was actually getting a script and an idea that they wanted to film, because the first Alien was written by a couple guys, got greenlit because they wanted to make more sci-fi after Star Wars was a hit. Second one wasn't necessarily going to be made, but again, they had a guy with a really good vision, and he put it out there and they banked on it, and it was risky, but it paid off. So the third Alien, now this was one, okay, they wanted it to be a hit, it was to be engineered, right? This was a too many cooks situation. So that is the unfortunate downfall of what happens as your franchise goes along. You get more meddling and interference, and it just becomes more about what will sell or what seems marketable, not necessarily what is the best for the art itself. So they went through a lot of different screenwriters and a lot of different concepts. They weren't even sure if Sigourney Weaver was going to come back, because again, she was already hesitant about being in Aliens, and all of her demands didn't get met in that movie, right? She wanted no guns. She didn't want to fire a gun. She wanted to make love to an alien, and she wanted to die. Right? Those were her things. She didn't get to do any of those things. So, I don't know exactly all of the screenwriters that were involved, but I know that I think it was William Gibson, who was a sci-fi author. He wrote a script, and then there were more developments, and they had this concept of like a wooden planet, a planet made of wood that was inhabited by monks, and it involved Ripley there with the monks on this wood planet, and there was an alien there, and there was also the concept of Ripley having a queen in her, and they performed this like religious ceremony at the end of it to take the queen out of her and save her, some kind of like religious purging thing, right? And it's an interesting idea, but the whole wooden planet thing could seem a little hokey of sorts, if not done right. There's this tendency I've seen lately where if there was an alternate script for a film that doesn't get made, people automatically read the script and assume that it's the greatest thing ever and that it was the most perfect thing, and why wasn't this made? It would have been so much better. And in some cases that is true, but there's the whole concept of this script being translated to the screen, and we never know how fully that's going to be interpreted, so we can't simply blindly assume that script alone versus finished film would equal a better project. so we can't go on the what ifs. We can talk about the what ifs all day. They had Rennie Harlan, who directed Nightmare on Elm Street 4. They brought him on as a director, and he left before the project started. And then they were going over these other ideas, ones where Newt and Hicks would be the main characters, more so with Bishop, and Ripley wasn't going to be in it, only as a cameo. And then it was going to be more focusing on like the war with aliens, like big alien war, like taking all the shootouts and stuff from Aliens, but on a bigger scale. And then it was going to get very like Cold War metaphor, because this is the late 80s, and it was going to be like trying to unite the Americans and the Russians together to fight the aliens, and that would have been pretty cheesy. But then again, 2010, the year we made contact, that whole movie is about, getting rid of the Cold War to work together because aliens. So, what do I know? Maybe it would have worked. So finally then, I don't remember then who they actually got to be the actual scriptwriter of what ended up being written, but they brought on David Fincher, who had big success as a music video director. I think he did videos for Madonna. And so he was on the project to direct. And then here's the crazy thing is the studio put out a teaser and set a release date before the film was even underway. And they started filming before they even had a finished script. And they started building sets before even knowing if these sets were to be used in the film. So they had to then work the script around, well, we have this big foundry, we've got to have a scene in here. So it was just a bungled mess. It was all over the place, right? Because David Fincher hadn't been established yet, he didn't really have any say in what was going on. He tried to be as technically proficient as he could. We've seen in his later films his dedication to, really getting stuff accurate and being attentive to detail. But at the time, this was difficult to do. And in fact, I think he either wasn't allowed to watch the dailies, or at a point the studio even locked him out of the editing room. There's a scene sort of 3/4 of the way through the film where Ripley goes down into some of the tunnels to find the alien herself, seeing if she can kill it or if the alien will kill her. And this whole bit was done basically with David Fincher just grabbing the camera and Sigourney Weaver and trying to go off and do it themselves in secrecy, because the studio wasn't going to let them film this whole bit. Right? So it was a big mess, and funny enough, there was actually a bit of censorship going on in the documentary makings of for Alien 3. On the DVD, the person who directed the behind-the-scenes footage, he ended up not wanting to be credited or under a different name, because a lot of the more controversial footage showing David Fincher getting mad and frustrated and showing you how crazy it was on set, a lot of that was cut out of the making of documentary, but it was restored in the Blu-ray version, thankfully. So you get to see all the crazy detail there, right? I guess a bit of a cover-up, they didn't want to admit how bad things really were. So, on the topic then of different cuts for the film, there's the theatrical cut, which is the shortest of the original 3, just under 2 hours. Then we have the extended cut, the assembly cut, or special edition version, whatever you want to call it. It's not a director's cut, though. That one is half an hour longer, if you can believe it. So it comes in just under 2.5 hours long. Pretty crazy. And there's a whole bunch of extra subplots added in, and character moments, and things changed around. It really does seem to feel like a different movie. One that is far more complete in its execution and style. So, the easiest way to find out what version you watched is I ask you this question. Did the chest burster come out of a dog or an ox? If it was a dog, that's the theatrical cut. If it's an ox, then that is the assembly cut, special edition version. So, to those of you who watched Alien 3 and have only seen the theatrical cut and didn't like it, I would ask that you at least try to watch the assembly cut version and just watch it for what it is and see, because perhaps you might be surprised. If you still don't like it, again, that's fine. That's your decision to decide based on your interpretation. But I would, again, just propose the offer. Give the assembly cut a chance and then decide your opinion on Alien 3, because, as I mentioned, David Fincher, he was not involved in the creation of this new version. So the idea was to piece it together from everything that was available and try to get this closer to what Fincher would have wanted as his preferred version. Because again, he wasn't involved. There is some audio where on the DVD the audio was very poor quality for some of the dialogue, so there's a noticeable hiss in the background because some of it's probably like the on-set audio. It wasn't like dubbed in post, and so they add the subtitles on for clarity there. And then when they did the Blu-ray version, they actually got all the actors back in to dub over the lines properly. Although, for someone who watched the DVD version constantly, it's a little odd. Because, like, I'm so used to hearing all the hissing and stuff and the odd noises, and now it's just proper clear audio. But you can tell that the actors are a little bit older, specifically Charles Dance, who you probably know from Game of Thrones, or as the voice of Emperor Ymir in The Witcher 3. So, that's kind of my rant about that. I like the assembly cut, that it's a longer film, it has more in-depth and detail and plot and stuff, and that's why it's the preferred version to watch. So again, I'd recommend you give that assembly cut a chance. Now let's get into the meat of the story and talk about the controversial choices which led to Alien 3 having a hated reputation among some fans. So, Alien 3 opens with a montage showing us that there is an alien egg on the Sulaco. Now, okay, I like this film, but gotta point out that egg being there is a complete plot hole. I guess the idea is that the queen could still lay eggs without the egg sac, but the area of the ship that the egg is shown in is nowhere that we've seen before, and it's not like part of the dropship or anything. So I'm not exactly certain how this egg got there. It's basically a plot hole. There's zero justification you could figure out for that. Though aliens, colonial marines tried to. We'll get to that in a bit. So this egg hatches, and the odd thing is that based on the way it is, there's perhaps either two eggs, and we only see one, or there's a type of special facehugger, which is never shown up close in the film. It's only in a distant shot. But there is meant to be a special facehugger that can create a queen alien. It's got a unique design to it, and the fingers to it, they're more like there's webbing in between them. So you can find photos of it, but you won't see it properly in the film. So unless this special facehugger can implant two people, one with a regular alien and one with a queen, then it wouldn't necessarily make sense to only have one egg, because we see the facehugger cracks Ripley's cryotube and infects her with the queen. And then we see the facehugger tries to break Newt's cryotube and infect her. But before it can do that, the acid blood sets off a fire alarm, and all of the escape pods are jettisoned from the Sulaco. So, thus, the ship crashes on the planet Fury 161, which is a Weyland-Yutani backwater planet used as a prison correctional facility. Been reduced to a custodial staff of about 25 or 26 double Y chromosomes or something like that. So the big then controversial thing happens is that Ripley is the only one that survives the crash. Bishop is smashed to pieces in the crash. A support beam crushes Corporal Hicks. He is killed. And then Newt drowns in her cryotube while she's asleep. So that's the big controversial thing, because, we had a bunch of characters from Aliens, and they ended up getting killed off basically just as the credits were finishing. And then they did. That's it. Right? So for many people, that's just like, the ultimate betrayal, right? We loved these characters. They were great and established, and they get killed off unceremoniously. And then James Cameron himself said he was really pissed at the direction of Alien 3 and how it messed everything up. How it was a slap in the face. So, yeah. I like that they killed off Newt and Hicks and Bishop and all that. I mean it. I'm serious. This is a horror movie franchise. It's a thriller suspense film. It's a dark, uncaring, cold universe. And, the good guys don't always win. That's the ultimate message of these films. It's very nihilistic and gothic and, Nietzschean or something like that. That's what I like about this movie. This one was not afraid to basically be that regardless of who you are, these xenomorphs are gonna, kill everything what they can. And thus this makes Alien 3 more of a drama, a meditation on the absurdity of existence and the fragility of life, or something like that, So I like that it did that, it was shocking and perhaps cold and uncaring, but the way it was done and the way it was used to develop Ripley's character as a nothing left to lose sort of person, and one who has to make the ultimate sacrifice. I really liked that, the way it drove her character in that way. But again, these people, they wanted to see Newton Hicks and Ripley all together and fighting aliens and stuff, and sometimes good leadership is not getting what you want. So, was it unceremonious and brutal? Yeah. But was I okay with it? Sure. I dig it. I like it. I guess I'm just a real sick, cold-hearted bastard. So, they're all killed off. Ripley is brought ashore and found by the prisoners here. The key difference is that Ripley is shown to be washed up on the shore in the assembly cut, which that would explain why she lives. I always found it odd and theatrical that Ripley is found alive in her cryotube when the cryotube was cracked open, and somehow Newt drowned and Ripley didn't. Not exactly sure how that happened in the theatrical, but the assembly cut makes it clear that, no, she's drifted out of the wreckage and washed up on shore. So that clears that up. So, little details here and that, a couple alternate tweaks and versions of the scene. A lot of really great low angles in this movie. Makes you feel real small and insignificant, and always looking up into the cosmos. So, again, the key difference is which creature creates the alien in this. In the theatrical, there's this dog that's caught by the facehugger when no one's around. And then in the assembly cut, it catches onto an ox, one of the ones used to pull the wreckage free from the ocean. I guess it makes a little more sense that it comes from a dog, because this alien moves on 4 legs and it runs very fast. Not so necessarily that concept you would associate with an ox of sorts. I mean, I guess if an ox was charging at you, but it seems like it was meant to be a dog more so. But I guess in the assembly cut, you don't have to watch the poor little puppy get killed by an alien in a chest burster, so many would see that as an improvement, I think. So Alien bursts out, right? And again, like Alien and Aliens, the first half of this movie, not too much happens. A lot of it's set up. Though this one does have some minor kills sprinkled throughout. Really, really grotesque scene where the alien, lashes out at this guy's face, and he falls down into this van and just gets diced all over the place. Like, yeah, it's a pretty grotesque, violent scene, and then later on, the alien surprises and attacks 2 other prisoners, and one of them sees it, and there's this great shot of it, like with all the blood on its face, and it does the whole teeth snarl thing that the xenomorphs do. It's a great moment as well. Really nice, very well shot. There's a really good sense of space, at least for this part of the movie, where you can just feel where all the corridors are connected to each other, even if it is all samey looking. So, we got a couple kills there, and the body count rises. But it isn't until the halfway mark when, we really get into the intense bit, where it's like, okay, stuff's happening now. Throughout the first half, Ripley is trying to figure out what's going on. Why is the company so interested in her scans, and why are they trying to get to her so fast? And not even knowing if there actually is an alien alive. She has to reboot Bishop and save him. Although, one thing I found was interesting, I'm sure if I looked it up I could figure it out, but there's this score in the scene where Ripley's fighting off a bunch of guys and Dylan shows up to save her, played very brilliantly by Charles S. Dutton, by the way. He has many great speeches in the film. He is fantastic in this movie. And I'm pretty sure that song was also in Batman and Robin. I think because it was the same composer, Elliot Goldenthal, whatever his name is. Perhaps, I don't know. It's an odd choice, but I don't know. It's kind of interesting. It's different. It's unique. I like different and unique. I like being surprised pleasantly. So we have to just reboot Bishop, and then he can explain that there is an alien. The one guy who survived earlier, Golic, he's crazy. Thinks the alien is like some kind of dragon or a deity, because the religious element of the monks from the wooden planet that survived, and that these prisoners are all very religious as well. But of course no one believes Ripley, because, why would you? It's a 7-8 foot tall creature with acid for blood, kills on sight, and is generally easily provoked. And this is where we find out that this is a maximum security prison, and they have no guns, just some fire axes scuttled about, some large knives in the avatar. That's it. Then we're fucked. And yes, this was because Sigourney Weaver didn't want guns in the film, because she's notoriously anti-gun, but also, conceptually, yeah, people hear that idea at first and be like, why do you have no guns? That makes no sense. But also, they raise that point in the movie. Well, what these prisoners do, they'd kill the superintendent and his assistant, and they'd never be able to get off the planet. And as soon as any other team shows up, they would just kill everyone on sight, and that would be the end of it, right? Like, how would you escape this planet? Are they gonna build a rocket ship out of some old crane parts and furnace or something like that? So it worked for what it was, and I like that we were really ramping up the intensity, getting it back to the style of Alien 1, because we showed how easy it was to kill these things. In Aliens, just, shoot them with a gun and stay far away from the acid blood. But now we're saying, well, what can we do if we take that away from you? Have to get really ingenious on that. So the other thing that people didn't like was that Charles Dance's character, Dr. Clemens, he is killed off very unceremoniously at the halfway point in the film, right before you get that iconic shot of the xenomorph up in Ripley's face. So, your main complaint in an Alien movie was that there was a really cool character who you liked, who got killed at the halfway point when you thought they were going to be more of an in-depth character and a main character. So that would be the exact same case as Dallas in Alien and Sergeant Apone and Drake in Aliens, is what you're saying. So what we're saying is that actually Alien 3 is kept on the tradition, right? That's how you do an Alien movie. You establish a main character, well, a very important seeming character, and you kill him off halfway through, surprising the audience, right? That's also Charles Dance, and he was in Game of Thrones, and Game of Thrones kills people all the time, so, there you go. It all makes sense. It's all perfect. Why are people complaining about this? Seriously. Even the producers of film are like, we killed him off too early. I'm like, no, it was perfect. He did what he had to do, right? And the alien's like, I don't care who you are. You're going to die anyways. That's how the alien works. I was kind of getting back into this, predator that toys with its prey. Plays around and toys with its prey, and is the angel of death, and it's here to whisk you away, regardless of who you are. So one of the big additions in the assembly cut is they have this plan to trap the alien in a nuclear waste silo and, just lock it up there. Maybe wait for the company to show up. They can go in there with smart guns and kill it. And this involves painting a whole bunch of, what do they call it stuff? Quinitracetylene, trinitracetylene, over the walls to cause an explosion to scare the alien from the fire into the silo. And in the original version, this scene ends very fast, which is surprising considering so much of those shots are all over the trailer. And the alien gets away, they fail. And in the assembly cut, that's the big difference. They actually succeed in catching it. And there's a bit where they're figuring out what to do, and a lot more scenes of that happening. And then eventually we find Golic. He's actually brought back into the picture, because in the theatrical he just disappears after he sees the alien kill Clemens. And here he kind of gets obsessed with the idea that it's like a god or dragon of sorts, some kind of deity. So he ends up killing one of the guys guarding it and opening it up so that the alien can kill him and let it loose again. So this leads to the second desperate act of them trying to lead the alien into the lead works to drown it in hot lead, hot oil in the furnace. One thing that is a little difficult to defend, I will admit, is some of the visual effects in this movie. The close-ups on the xenomorph, when it's an animatronic or it's a puppet or guy in a suit or robotics, those are very impressive, right? Like all the slime dripping off it. And I really liked H.R. Giger's design for the alien in this film. He did not design the aliens in Aliens, and he did not design the Queen alien. That was done by James Cameron. The reason for the design change in Aliens was that dome of the xenomorph kept cracking in Aliens, and so they just removed it, so now you got that nice shell look in the film. Though I always kind of took it to be that perhaps the dome bit was when the alien was on a spaceship as opposed to a planetoid, giving it a different look in Aliens. So in Alien 3, the dome is back, but now it's not like, opaque or anything. It's like obscure. Sorry. I always get those words confused. It's not translucent like it was in Alien. It's opaque. It's obscure. You can't see through it in Alien 3. It seems more fleshy, less biomechanical like it was in Alien. And it's got more lips because Giger wanted to have more of a sexualized nature. He has to sketch of like a monk trying to kiss the alien and then the alien doing the second tongue thing to kill the prisoner. So the close-ups are great. All that stuff looks fantastic. It's the shots when the alien is like moving around or running or sprinting through the hallways that many have pointed out don't look good. They don't hold up, and they were kind of half decent for the time, but still not great. But the one rumor I have to squash is about that's early CG. That is not a CG alien in Alien 3. The only CG in the film is the shot of the xenomorph's skull cracking open near the end, and some debris that was added to exterior shots of the prison facility, like floating around in the wind. The xenomorph in Alien 3, for the wide shots and the running shots, was accomplished by a team moving a puppet around with like a very small one with like rods and wires, right? So multiple people would be controlling different limbs, and then they would walk it around or do the running motions and stuff that they needed to do, all in front of a blue screen. And then, after that was filmed, it was then composited onto the final shots in the film. So it was a pretty interesting visual effect, the way they did it with the rod puppet. And it was not CG. They tried to do it as practical as possible. But ultimately, yeah, it didn't really turn out the greatest. After two older films with pretty flawless effects that hold up very well, it is very disappointing that we would have a third one where the effects were already dated by that time. And keep in mind, this would have been after Terminator 2 Judgment Day, which pretty much was one of the main films that wrote the book on how to do CG and visual effects. And then barely 1 year later, Alien 3 was followed up by Jurassic Park in 93. And the CG and animatronics in that film are gorgeous, and most of them hold up very well. So, yeah, that is kind of a bit of a letdown in this film. That part of the visual effects does not hold up, and it is quite dated. But thankfully, though, we have those great close-up shots of the alien. Those always look very good in this franchise. So, throughout the film then, yeah, these extra bits, it's like little character moments here and there, extended versions of scenes, extra lines here and there, and it just all helps the film feel more complete. There's like some sequences, like when Clemens and Andrews meet where Andrews is mad at Clemens for letting Ripley out of the infirmary. The assembly cut has more dialogue at the beginning of the scene and more dialogue at the end, and therefore the scene now feels complete, because originally you just got this truncated version, only the middle of the scene. So that's important. So Ripley eventually scans herself in the cryopod and finds out she has a queen alien inside her. And I'm not sure how she figured out it was a queen. I'm guessing it's because, she'd been awake for quite a while and it hadn't burst out of her yet. Usually those things burst pretty fast once you wake up. So that's probably how. But and she originally wants Dylan to just kill her. And then they decide, well, perhaps she can fight the alien first, because the alien's not going to kill her. It's going to try to keep her alive. I do find it odd, though, that this alien never decides to just abduct Ripley and, cocoon her. Right? Maybe the cocoon thing wasn't a thing now. I don't know exactly how it works. Xenomorph science is weird. Other great moment I gotta shout out is when the Superintendent Andrews is killed by the alien, gets dragged up into a vent, and there's a brief moment of silence, and then one of the prisoners, Morse, who hasn't really been in the movie much, he's just there holding a chair, and he sees that, and he just says, just fuck. It's just such a clean use of the word, and it's just so perfect of a moment when he says it. Such a great scene. There's a lot of swearing in this movie, but that's probably the best one right there. One of the best curses in a film ever. So we get to the leadwork scene, where the idea is the prisoners are all going to run around through the tunnel, getting the alien to chase them, while they slowly close off sections of the tunnel to eventually trap the alien in this corridor, where it's going to be pushed into a lead mold, and they're going to drop boiling lead on it. And so there's a big chase scene, and this is really interesting because a lot of the shots are from the alien's POV, which I really like. We get some really cool shots of this running through the tunnels, very well done. And it was kind of a happy accident. The camera operator one time, he just sort of jokingly turned the camera upside down when filming one of these shots, and they decided to make that a thing, that, it was like running after them on the ceiling. That's pretty cool. So all those POV shots, they probably did it to save themselves visual effects, but really puts you in that moment, and you see as the camera's creeping closer and closer towards these characters. It gets really intense. It's very disorienting. You kind of lose all sense of geography, but again, it's kind of like just throwing you all in over your head, and you have no idea what's going on, because the place is a maze, and that's what they want you to feel like, that it's a maze in there. Ooh, good stretch. I will say that Alien and Aliens excel more in the ensemble cast, because many of the characters in Alien 3 are memorable ones. I really like them. But many of them are just background characters who, they all have names, but we never hear them, and they just die. They're there to raise the body count, and, we don't know much about them. So, that, again, is a lesser strike on the film. Perhaps if it was a smaller cast and everyone was named and focused on more, it would be a little more entertaining. And perhaps if they also weren't all just, a bunch of bald British dudes, it makes it hard to distinguish in some circumstances. So, in the climax of the film, not much is actually extra. Most of that was pretty intact, save for a few little moments here and there. One of them I like is when some of the prisoners make it look like they're running away from the plan. And, Ripley says, well, where are they going? What about the plan? And Dylan's all like, look, they're immune, you're not. You're immune, they're not. And what are we doing now? Improvising. We're improvising. Great. So, that's a pretty great moment. Just improvising. Oh man, that's the least improvising situation you want. They managed to get the alien in the lead. Ripley has to climb out. Dylan stays behind to keep the alien there. And, Dude tries fighting off the alien for a while, and we know he's not going to succeed. You can't do that, but he puts up a hell of a fight, and he's got some great moments in this movie. Give Charles S. Dutton credit. He's a great actor. And even once they pour the lead on it, that doesn't kill it. It just jumps out of the lead. And so Ripley has to pull the sprinklers on it because it's boiling hot and cools it fast so it cracks and explodes. And they did it. They got the alien done. Whoa. But then the company shows up and they want the alien that's inside of Ripley. And they're trying to make it look like, oh, we're just going to take it out and kill it. And look, here's another bishop, but he's a human, the one who designed the bishop android. But that's made more confusing that his name in the credits is Bishop 2. And then Alien vs. Predator got even weirder by saying that there was already a Charles Bishop Wayland back in 2004. So, I really don't know when it comes down to that. But, he has regular human blood at the end, and he's actually even, his ear gets beaten off. Small detail, but it's there. So I would say that he is human. So Ripley, in the end, doesn't trust the company. Good. And then decides to sacrifice herself in lava. And another small change is in the theatrical, the chest burster bursts out of Ripley at the last moment, but she manages to hold on to it until they fall into the lava. And this was changed so that it doesn't burst out of her in the assembly cut. And I like that better because, the idea of the chest bursters, it's always a really slow, painful sequence of it, slowly beating its way out. Right? This one, it just kind of just pops oh, it's nothing. And it's supposed to be that once it bursts, you're dead. You're dead. And this one, she has the strength to, hold on to it and struggle it with her so that it doesn't escape. No. Plus, then, by doing this, she never actually has to experience the chest burster. Right? She gets to kill herself before it happens. Though the studio was in debate about this ending because this was just after Terminator 2 ended with a guy self-sacrificing into the lava. So they kept it in, but, tweaked it a little here and there. And that's Alien 3, right? She did it. We killed all the aliens and all the xenomorphs. And I'm assuming that when the reactor exploded on LV-426 that it took out the derelict spacecraft as well, because it was close enough. Alright. I guess I gotta talk about aliens, colonial marines now. One moment. I need a little something to prepare for this. Colonial Marines was a game that happened, and I already talked a bit about my dislike for it in the Aliens video. And then they decided to give it a DLC to go one step further on how batshit crazy this game's idea of canon was. So, I guess the guys who wrote Colonial Marines were like big Aliens fans, and therefore it was all about, shooting and explosions, not about horror and tension and subtlety. And they wanted to retcon Alien 3 because some people disliked that Newton Hicks died. Again, I argue that it was a decision for the best. We kept establishing that this was a dark, nihilistic, scary universe, that it didn't matter who you were, you're all gonna die. That's how it works, right? Just because you're the cute innocent girl or the cool badass soldier doesn't mean that you get any reprieve. Perhaps it was a little unceremonious, they died at the beginning and off screen, but ultimately, hey, neither of them got to be brutally murdered by a xenomorph, and neither of them got chest bursted or face hugged or anything like that, so perhaps it was for the better. They spared themselves the pain of that possibility. But Aliens Colonial Marines says, okay, alright, here's what really happened. What really happened was that as soon as the Sulaco was leaving, that the company redirected another ship that was nearby to go and attach to the Sulaco, and that this one was already infected with aliens on it, right? And so that's how the Egg and the Facehuggers got on board, that there was this whole other ship that was connected to the Sulaco that we just never saw in Alien 3 whatsoever. It just wasn't shown, right? And that's how the Facehuggers got there. And then a couple of random guys showed up, and they specifically opened Hicks's cryopod. So he woke up, and he saw that Ripley was infected with the Facehugger. And then what happened is a bunch of Weyland-Yutani Marines came in, and they had a fight. And one of them randomly shot the Facehugger on Ripley's face, and that's what caused the acid blood leak to start off the fire alarm and cause the escape pods to descend. And then what happened was, while these guys were fighting, one of these Marines decided to grab this one colonist and throw him into a cryopod and go through the whole process of locking him in the cryopod mid-fight. And that means it wasn't actually Hicks that got killed in Alien 3. It was some random colonist dude who, because he was so unrecognizable, they just assumed it was Hicks. It wasn't actually him. And Hicks was actually alive the whole time, and he was fighting to get to Ripley. And he was there right at the end as he saw her jump, right? And he said, no, right? Y'all see how, fan-fiction-y this sounds? How desperate this seems? This seems like somebody going through and looking at the events of the film and trying to come up with, the teeniest tiny little bits of pieces they can figure out. Okay, we wanted to keep Hicks alive, so we couldn't actually see him in Alien 3, so that means that it could have been someone else in there. How do we get someone else? Right, well, it was a fight, and just, it's dumb, okay? It's like the ultimate rationale of trying to just tweak things and not in a clever way. If they make an Alien 5 and it ignores Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, and it just starts off like what Neil Blomkamp, director of District 9 and Elysium, he wanted to do an Alien 5. But it's not happening now because they're focusing more on Ridley Scott's prequels. If Neil Blomkamp's Alien 5 erased Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, well, I'd be okay with it. I mean, I've still got the Blu-rays here. I can still watch those anytime. They're not going to be erased from history. And I would at least give them credit that they would think of something a little more creative than that, absurdity of circumstance and events. It's not even the dumbest moment in that DLC, by the way. There's a bit where, like, the character you play as, like, she wakes up and she's been face-hugged, and I guess she also had a queen or something, because she goes through the whole game of the DLC, and the chest burster doesn't burst out of you, and the aliens still try to kill you for some reason. You get to the end of all that, and the alien bursts out of her, and as it's bursting out of her, she just grabs it and snaps its neck. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that was an option. Why doesn't everybody just simply do that? Like, come on, man, really? So again, I'll accept changes to the alien canon if they come up with something interesting, but like, that was just so desperate of an attempt to do. And then I realized that also in my saying that the derelict was destroyed by the atmosphere processor exploding, I realized no, because I've seen footage of there being levels inside the derelict spacecraft. See, it's funny that, do y'all know the Kobayashi Maru test from Star Trek? This idea of the no-win scenario that every captain eventually has to face, where you can't save everybody, that's how it is, right? That was what it was in Star Trek 2, about how, eventually they couldn't save Spock, right? But eventually I guess they could in the search for Spock. Oh well. And that's kind of the idea with Alien 3, this idea that no, you can't save everyone, and you're not going to get a perfect ending, and the good guys don't always win. And I just find it ironic that that was the message of Alien 3, and it ended up just spawning a whole bunch of desperation to try to get the ending people wanted, thus completely ignoring what the concept and message of the movie was. So yeah, Alien 3, it's dark, it's gritty, mostly good special effects, mostly good characters, and a claustrophobic atmosphere, and it's very suspenseful, keeps you on your toes. You don't know who's going to live and who's going to die, because a lot of people are killed off without warning. Some pretty great kills, a lot of blood for the horror fans, very good score, very emotional, and if it was only a trilogy, it would be a nice ending to everything with a very good sacrifice at the end. So yeah, I really dig Alien 3 a lot. It's not as good as Alien or Aliens, obviously, but it's still a very well done, well shot film. I do feel sorry that David Fincher had such a miserable experience on the film, that he's disowned it, and that he's never gonna come around to it again. In a perfect world, I would have liked to have seen what he would have done fully with all the control he needed. But that's not always how it works, It's not always how it is. So yeah, once again, I implore you to consider the assembly cut of Alien 3. It's on the DVD, it's on the Blu-ray. Give that one a shot, and perhaps you might be interested in changing your mind and thoughts on the film, because I feel it's a more complete experience. Well, I think that's all I have to say about Alien 3. Join me next time when we see if we can get through Alien Resurrection. It's gonna be a long one, let's just say, Anyway, hope you all enjoyed that.